With that being said, we're going to start the recap. And I'll pass it over to Amber.
Yeah, so someone dropped this gem in the chat last time we met, so I'm just going to read it out loud. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. African Proverbs. So in our next slide, we are going to be looking at everything that you all stated in the chat when we asked a question. And so I think here we're going to ask maybe some volunteers to share out loud one of these quotes that speaks to you. Obviously, we couldn't put them all on the slide, but these are the ones that stood out, and we really just kind of wanted them bring them back forward to put them at the center of this conversation. So, yeah, I'll just give everybody kind of like a minute to read, and then if there's one here that somebody wants to kind of just share out loud and why that one speaks to them.
And we'll also ask to raise your hand if you would like to come off mute. And if one of these resonate with you, just raise your hand, come off mute, and we will call on you as well. Anya, I see your hand.
Hey, thank you. Good morning. Strength in numbers stood out to me. I just thought, with everything that's going on in the nation and our state, like it's really important that we stand up in numbers, and there's strength in those numbers. We need numbers. And so that stood out to me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Anya. And I agree. That was one of the things that someone dropped in the chat last time, and is strength in numbers. And I couldn't agree with you more. So thank you, Anya. Brittany, feel free.
One that has stood out to me even before this is the nothing about us without us. I even feel it sometimes in work where leadership will make decisions, and it impacts kind of the programmatic staff. And I'm kind of sitting here like, what is happening? This doesn't make any sense. And when did we get a chance to give our 2 cents? And I think it's even more important when you're working with communities, because you might come in with some big ideas, but if they don't think that that's helpful or a solution, it's not going to work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Brittany. Andrea Clark, you're next.
Yeah, the one that kind of jumped out at me is the change is dependent on everybody. For me personally, I can get stuck in, but I'm following the rules. I'm being nice to everybody. I'm part of the positive culture. So everybody else needs to, step up and be better. But this is for me, it's changes dependent on everybody, whether you're involved or whether you need it or not. Everybody needs to be involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Andrea. Anthony.
Yeah, for me, the one that stands out really is we are all accountable. As someone who was an equity and social justice manager, a lot of times people felt that we held the equity work, when in actuality, our jobs were to empower their mindset. So that's the one that stood out to me, because a lot of times we want to point the fingers, or people want to point the fingers and say it's your responsibility because you're the subject matter expert, quote unquote. But in actuality, like I said, we're there to empower, to make sure that the overall mindset is changed so people can actually start incorporating equity, social justice, and DEI work into their everyday practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Anthony. And I'll just say this before I call on the next person. I think that, Anthony, what you just said is absolutely positively true. Working in the Office of Equity, I think sometimes people look at us and think that we're supposed to solve every issue within Washington State. But a part of this community of practice is, how do we empower this platform that we have, the 230 some odd people that are on this call, ideally to solve the problems within their own organization? How do we create a safe space and to empower people to do that? So I think that is important that you just said that, and just how do you empower and how do you motivate people to create change, and not necessarily think that you have to be the person that incorporates all that change and make that change occur. So thank you for uplifting that. Thank you for saying that. I don't want to say this wrong. Is it Sonia or Sonja? You let me know.
It's Sonia, but I never correct people for Sonia. It's Sonja, I will correct you for. The one that stands out to me is silence is acceptance. As an ally to many communities, this is one that sits heavy with me. But at the same time, it's important to pay attention to the group itself to find out how they want me to speak forward and help make that change. I need to sit back and listen to what the community wants as far as that allyship, but making sure that not keeping my mouth completely shut, because if I see it and don't speak on it, I'm accepting it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Rook, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. The one that stepped out to me that we've already talked about is we are all accountable. And I think one thing that I've done in the past, and I've seen other people within these spaces do, I'll slow down, is once we find the problem and we point it out, sometimes we don't think that we're accountable for it anymore because we see the problem and pointed it out. And that comes back to me time and time again of like, I'm still accountable even though I know that the problem's here. So that stood out to me today when I saw those words. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rook. Nagmana.
Okay, so the one that's standing out to me is be loud and proud. And I want to add authentically to that. Be loud and proud authentically, because your truth is yours, and what experience, your lived experience you bring with you is what really matters, because that's what's going to change everything for you. Numbers is going to come from, that's where nothing about us is without us is going to be listened to, because when you are loud and proud, you're articulating it, and that is you and yours, and other people will buy in because they see your vision and they see your pain, or they relate. So that's important to me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Nagmana. I think that was the one that resonated with me the most as well, because if you all don't know, I am very loud. So that was the one that resonated with me the most as well. So thank you for that. Samuel, go ahead.
Hi, nice to see everybody. To me, the accountability, nothing without us, about us without us, and working together all kind of fit together to me. I've been thinking about accountability a lot and thinking about consequences. You know, being accountable means there's some consequences for your action or inaction or complicity or whatever. And, you know, we're all going to face consequences of our collective action for the next period of time, whether it's political or environmental or economic or democratic. We're living in systems that are moving in directions that we have a responsibility to mitigate, and that responsibility comes from the consequences that we're all going to face. So, thanks.
Absolutely. Accountability and responsibility. Thank you for that, Samuel. Absolutely. Miranda, we'll have you go, and then Miranda we'll move on to the next. So Miranda, take it away.
Thank you so much. This is just such a fantastic group and experience to share in and to learn from. Really, every single one of these resonates with me in different ways, and the explanations that have gone before also already gave me new depth to some of the things I was thinking. But something that's also standing out is especially we are accountable, all accountable, and equity is everyone's responsibility. A colleague of mine has recently been challenging me with how do we find that balance of owning that accountability and continuing to do the hard work, but without allowing other people who are perhaps neglecting their responsibility to continue putting that emotional labor unfairly on those of us that are willing to continue. And as one example, with such a big geographically diverse state, and therefore diverse in every other sense of the word, especially social politically, as a statewide organization, I'm still trying to figure out, how do I balance even things like what we call out in our land acknowledgement? How much is just simply us acknowledging and reminding people of that importance versus maybe backing off at some point and saying it's up to everybody here. You, by this point, have heard enough land acknowledgements. You have been challenged enough times. Hopefully you should have done the work on your own by now. We are not going to continue feeling like we are the only ones responsible to bring that respect and mind space into our conversations. But then not wanting to drop that important reminder if it hasn't truly become part of the mindset of our state and the people that we're serving. So it's a hard balance, because I'm not wanting to put the labor on the same people over and over and over, but also wanting to make sure that we are continuing to hold ourselves accountable to doing this work for as long as it needs to be done. Just trying to find that balance with this.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, Miranda. I'll be completely transparent. I told my team, we had a meeting at 9:05 this morning, and I woke up this morning and my heart felt heavy. I don't usually wake up with a heavy heart. I don't know, and I still do not know where that heavy heart kind of stemmed from. But I did. I woke up with a very heavy heart. I woke up feeling a lot of emotional labor, like a lot of heaviness, and understanding, how do we do this work? How do we get people to understand this work, right? So, yeah, absolutely. So a part of this community of practice, when Amber and I was putting together, we took 2 months. We took some time to really delve into and being intentional from May until we meet in July till today. How can we make that kickoff event a part of this COP today? How do we not only look at everything that people contributed from May's kickoff event till today? So we wanted to really, sometimes, you all are dropping these gems in the chat. We want to be mindful too that sometimes the chat goes so quickly that we really don't get to read everything all at once. So just know that Amber and I, in a part of, the Office of Equity, the communications team, we are reading the chat transcript. We are saving the chat transcript. We are wanting to understand, and using that as a way to help us elevate this work and help us to understand how to, I almost said some other stuff, but how do we move forward and how do we propel this work forward? So just know that you all are seen, you all are heard. We hear you, we're here with you. We're fighting the fight every day that you all are fighting the fight. And as long as you all are willing to fight the fight, then we are willing to be here and fight the fight with you. So just wanted to uplift that and say that going forward. And I love all of these. I don't remember who said all of these in the chat, but just know these were actual phrases that people dropped in the chat for the kickoff event, and just wanted to uplift that and put that out there. And I'll pass it to you, Amber.
Yes. So can we go to the other slide real quick? I just wanted to share the one that resonated with me, hearing you all. So I was compelled to share real quick. So the one that really stood out to me was the do things with communities and not to communities. So that takes us to the next slide. And the reason this one really, all of them stood out to me, but this one really, I feel like Ranisha and I and team really, going through the chat and taking our time to like really dive deep into the conversations that were happening in the chat while we're facilitating this. I know there's like conversations happening in the chat, and we really want you all to know that we are reading them, we're seeing them, we're debriefing on them. And the question that we posed last time was, where do you see the COP going? And what do you want to see out of the COP? And I think these questions go back to that quote, right? That do things with community. You all right here are the COP community, right? And not to you all. And that is why we're not telling you all, this is what we need to do in this group, right? We really want to get your feedback, and we want to listen to one another and just move together and make that change. So those are the two questions that we posed. And Ranisha is going to go over the data based on the chat that happened in our first meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amber. So during our kickoff event, and if you received the Gov delivery message, we sent out a PDF. And so this data is cumulative of that PDF document. So there's a four or 5 page document that was sent out yesterday where everyone's questions, thank you for dropping that in the chat, Rook, everyone's questions and or comments, we sifted through over 100 pages, Amber, of transcript. I think it was over 100 pages of transcript that we sifted through to find questions, comments, anything that could help us develop this community of practice, creating this a safe space to create change. And so what we ultimately realized was that, and we had to try to group them into like 5 or 6 categories, because if we didn't group them into 5 or 6 categories, then we knew that we would have had a million different categories. So what we came to the realization was a lot of the breakdown of that PDF document, which is an accessible document as well. Thank you to our comms team for that. 33% focused on relational partnership. So what does that mean? They talked about creating this community, or having this community be a safe space, and creating relational partnership within this community of practice. That was 33% of the responses that we received. The next biggest portion was equity in our processes, which means that could be organizational processes, whatever may have you, whether it's in a community, but a lot of the 28% said equity in processes. And then we had 22% said statewide initiatives, which, like I said, the breakdown of that could be, how are we breaking down silos as a state? Those were some comments and suggestions that were related to statewide initiatives. Then we had 15% that talked about pair and or best practices. 15% said that. So how do we talk about best practices? How do we relate on pair as a state mandate? That was 15% of the responses. And then lastly, equity and leadership was 2%. Not saying that that is the least of our concerns, because I know that equity in leadership is a big deal. And how do we counteract those barriers that we may receive in our workplace? So this was just some of the things that we
activity question while I try to figure out my audio.
Thank you.
I got you. I'm loud. Am I good, Rook? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm loud. So here it goes. Okay, so for this activity, we want to start off, since we're in the spirit of starting off with relational partnership. The question that we want to pose is, when you feel connected in a space, how do you show up? Or if it's easier to say, when you don't feel disconnected, or when you feel disconnected in a space, share one or the other. So can you share when you feel connected in a space, how do you show up? Or if it's easier to say, when you know that you feel disconnected in a space, how do you show up?